All right. Oh, who's that guy? Metternich. All right. Well, long name. Anyway, France, World War One, collective security. Good word to know. Couple different alliances. Make sure you're aware of those. Excuse me. All right. Now I still remember where we stopped. Okay. Yeah, habeas corpus. Admired the British Constitution. Advocate economic individualism. Middle class. We did that. Talked about labor unions. We talked about Coldplay. Okay. All right. So they won the independence movements. 1830s. Day two. Revolutions sweep across Europe, driven by nationalism and liberalism. Again, ism is a belief that we are a nation. You have to be a nation first before you can contemplate statehood. So you have to have a shared vision, things that bind you together, a language, a religion perhaps, holidays, all sorts of things. But you're bound together culturally as a nation of people, and then you can worry about making your borders, which is the state part. And the idea of liberalism, whereby the government's sole purpose, remember, in 19th century liberalism is just to make sure that my natural inalienable rights are not infringed upon, that I am free to chart my life as best I can with as little government interaction as possible, aside from keeping me safe and protecting my rights. Liberalism. All right. There we go. Oh, very nice. Whoops. King Charles X of France attempted to actually restore absolutism. A revolution, the Second French Revolution, led to his abdication, and he was replaced by Louis Philippe. I'll be on your website. And we know that Chaz X, it's from the Bronx. We know that he wanted to be an absolute ruler because, he said things like this. I would rather saw wood than be a king of the English type. So the idea of a limited monarch, the idea of a constitutional monarchy was not, even that was too removed from the norm for Chaz here. Great quote. All right, moving on. And that's who replaced him, Louis Philippe. Philippe. Nice. All right. During this time period, a new country is formed. Revolutionaries helped Belgium gain independence from the Netherlands. So Belgium in the 1830s becomes a country. And, that's where we get, Flanders, idly ho. I'm kidding. But Flanders is a region in Belgium. So they become independent. That's good. Only to be invaded a bunch of times in the future. Revolutionaries, the Carbonari, tried to revolt against foreign domination of Italy. There are lots of other countries, not Italian people, who actually have literal stakes in Italy. And this group tries to force at least the non-Italian folk out. It fails. Austrian forces went in there and said no. But this is Italy. These are the Italian states. Well, part of Italy. It's their first attempt at autonomy, at kicking out foreign influence. There's a large push. We know that by the 1830s, all of South America is independent. Well, all Spanish controlled South America is independent by 1830, so they are successful. And that's partly because of their revolutions and partly because, Spain. Also during this time, Poland revolted against Russian control, but was defeated. Wah, wah, wah. Poor Poland. The crash course on the Constitution of Europe, the Congress of Vienna, from Crash Course AP Europe, or Crash Course European History, that John Green does, goes into this really well if you want a little more sort of just to hear it again. In 1848, a much more important year, a huge year, a year so important, they wrote a book about it, and I've got it somewhere, 1848. Another round of liberal and nationalist revolutions occurred in Europe. Again, remember, 1815 was the defeat of Waterloo, was the the Congress of Vienna. The Concert of Europe begins in 1815, 15 years later, after the heavy repression. Because remember, not everybody's going to be quiet. So 1830, there's a round of independence movements. And there are others, too, that aren't mentioned here. Greece, Serbia, Ireland, all tried, have various successes, have various levels of failure. Ireland tries and tries and tries and tries. Ireland even sought Germany's help in 1917 to get figured, because England was distracted with the war, so that didn't work. Eventually, though, you bomb enough people. In 1848, again, another 18, 20 years later, another round happens. This is the third French Revolution, with barricades and the whole 9 yards. Louis Philippe was overthrown in France despite clashes between the bourgeoisie and the workers. So now this is a different. So you had the bourgeoisie, the middle class, again, going after the powers that be. But then you have the workers who are dissatisfied with their lot in life, going after the bourgeoisie because they're your factory owner. They're the ones who are pretty much in charge of labor. So you have multiple conflicts going on here. You start to see how even that the ideas of the Enlightenment, that the ideas of liberalism, of rights and freedoms are trickling down to everybody, because we're almost 100 years into this. Well, that's a fancy flag. You can tell we're in the 1850s now. France elected Louis Napoleon, Napoleon's nephew, as president. 4 years later, he declares himself emperor. It's in the blood. It's in that Napoleonic blood. I must. Give me a crown. Give me a crown. So there he is. Emperor Napoleon III. I think the second went to Mexico. During the time of Zorro, the mythical figure, the Robin Hood of Mexico. Emperor Ferdinand I. Okay, where is that? What is that? The green. Don't look it up. Don't cheat. Tell me. What is it?
Austria-Hungary or Austria?
Fine. So, revolutionary fervor, fervor, good word, spreads from Paris to Vienna. Metternich resigned as tensions grew. So, 1850, he has run his course. Now, remember, not the soul, but one of the primary purposes of the Concert of Europe was to keep Europe from blowing up into a multi-state conflict. And to that end, he is successful. Remember, like I told you, there are skirmishes between Prussia and France. There are skirmishes in the Balkans. We do have the Crimean War, which is against Russia and England and the Turks and stuff. So that's the Crimean War is where we got the Charge of the Light Brigade. That poem. Someone have a hand up? I heard a kadoom.
I do.
What's up? Who's I do? Oh, Ben, what's up?
Yeah. What does fervor mean?
What's it? Okay. I'm going to give you a teacher answer. What's it sound like?
Fever.
Okay. Fervor is excitement.
Favor?
Fervor is, yeah, it's like, it's all the rage. It's going on. It's in France. It's excitement. Fervor is excitement. So there's your word of the day. All right. When France has a cold, all of Europe sneezes. And again, that's Metternich's quote. And it was kind of true, which is part of the reason why they wanted to keep France in check on one end with the whole Enlightenment, liberalism stuff, but also not so in check that at the other end, they're angry and they decide to go, attack people. Because then everybody gets all wound up. Austria, their ethnic diversity, and it is very, very ethnically diverse. I mean, when you think about what's there today, part of Italy, you've got Croatia, and Bosnia and Herzegovina, you got Hungary, you got Romania, you got all kinds of stuff. I know a little bit of what's Romania, because there's Transylvania. I don't go blah, blah, blah. Okay, it's actually a Transylvania County, North Carolina. But very ethnically diverse, which makes unification a challenge. You don't believe me? Just watch any video about Yugoslavia in the 1990s. Okay. Nice pants. The Austrian government regained control. They agreed to some reforms. They crushed the Hungarian resistance, but they agreed to some reforms. And one thing they allow Hungary to do is rule itself. It's still part of the Austro-Hungarian Empire, but they give Hungary basically sort of like a home rule, and they get to make decisions for themselves. Still have to swear allegiance, and they got to pay taxes, but there's a little more autonomy in Hungary, and that's kind of how they quell this after they put them down. Next, I see Italy again. Giuseppe Mazzini led the Young Italy movement, hoping to establish a liberal republic in a united Italy. Now, remember who tends to be in the liberal side in the 19th century, and remember the groups that tend to be the conservative side in the 19th century. And you have to think that there are a couple of spots in the Italian city-states that aren't going to want to be part of this. And if you're a smart person, and you're in this class and you haven't dropped it yet, so you are, you can probably figure out who at least one of these is. You think of which region in Italy is not going to want to be part of this? You can cheat. Look at the map.
Is it the southern part?
Okay, more of a central part. The southern part, it's going to be more. The southern part's going to be resistive, yes, but they're eventually going to come around. There are other two parts that took a lot longer to get them to buy into it. All right, so a people destined to achieve great things must one day or another form a nation state. This is true. Italy, therefore, will be one. Her geographical conditions, her language, her literature, and the desire of all her people. All those things go into being a nation. That, and then a nation state is just that. It's, you know, go back to to ancient Greece, but you have to want to be a state. And that desire to be a state is what drives the whole nation forward. Oh, wait a minute. There is something else going on in the news having to do with states. Anybody? Kylie, who are you talking to?
Is it the Papal States?
The Papal States are part of Italy. I'm talking about what's going on in America as far as states are concerned.
51st state talk.
The 51st state talk. That's right. DC wanted to be a 51st state, and then like Puerto Rico being the 52nd, and the Virgin Islands being the 53rd. Totally messing stuff up. That flag would be all kind of funky. But look, I'm here for it. I'm not gonna lie to you. At me, I'm here for it. Who else wants to join? Why don't we annex Canada, annex Mexico, and just be America? Super America. Let's go. Okay. Let them have their own rights. Don't make them be like us, because duh. All right. So Austrians easily defeat the movement as Italians remain divided over unification. Okay, so you've got this group. Let's go back. See, all these different colors are all the different parts of Italy. So when you're that divided, you just pick a few and keep them isolated, and you'll win. Divide and conquer. But eventually they're going to come around. The Papal States are not going to be a part of this, nor is Venetia, because the Venetians, that goes back in history. That goes back to the Medici family and all that kind of stuff. All right. In 1848, again, still in 1848, riots in Prussia led the king to call for reforms. The assembly meets in Frankfurt. That's right, home of the Frankfurter. Hamburg, home of the Hamburger. And they draft a constitution to unite Germany. These slides oversimplify this process, and it's just as well. It's just as well. All right. It's called Prussia because the people. Most names are based on language or ethnic groups. The Franks, there's why France is France, things like that. All right. The Frankfurt Assembly lost momentum because too focused on details. Like stereotypes are stereotypes because they're true, right? The fact that the German Assembly got lost in minutia and exactness and detail, it should not surprise anybody, because they're very detail-driven people. Very Einstein. Instead of just saying, let's be a country, they were starting to hash out all the particulars. So they got a little ahead of themselves, so it didn't work. Again, why I said BMWs are so expensive. It's made by hand, it's not efficient, but it's done well. I will not accept the crown from the gutter. Very nice. King Frederick Wilhelm IV rejected the Assembly's plans for a constitutional monarchy. Again, trying to work in sort of liberalist, middle class, enlightened ideas into the government. Enough of this autocratic stuff, enough of this absolute monarchical stuff. We are a collective body. We want a Congress. We want it to be more representative, and you're getting pushback from those on top because they recognize it's less of a crown. It's less authority. Ben, your mic's open. Liberal revolutions of the 30s and 48 basically forced conservative leaders to accept some reform. They cannot maintain the same kind of autocratic absolute policies from a century prior because we know more. There's more information out there. Like the times they are changing, and you cannot put the genie back in the bottle. Okay, so you're not going to be able to make it like it was before. Today, with a more conservative voice in America wanting things to go back, it can't. Because we've seen what it's like past that, and no one's going to want to go back. No one's going to want to go back when they've seen what sliver of rights look like, when they see what sort of opportunities out there for them if they're willing to risk their whatever monies they have in business, or to go sail, or to go whaling, which is one of the most equal opportunity jobs on the planet. Having seen all this, you're not going to get the buy-in from the population to be that there's not going to be a Sun King ever again unless it's by military force, or you're North Korea. Oh, same thing. So You just can't unless you control information. All right. One day more. Okay. Most revolutions failed. They lack widespread support. Revolutionaries were divided. Governments crushed results. So when looking at revolutions as a flu, as a disease, this part right here, this failure part, is basically the disease gets so bad it eats itself and you wither and die. Revolutions that get to this point and then come to a resolution and keep coming back, come back for the reasons I said yesterday. They do not address the underlying issues. These revolutions, again, it's the wrong word, but they get started and then just kind of eat themselves. They die from within. The body dies from within. The revolution kills itself, basically. But because of these French revolutions, the French have very, very wide streets. And because of this revolution, Washington, D.C. looks the way it does. It has a center, and it has spokes coming out, and it has very wide streets because the guy who redesigned Paris designed Washington, D.C. And just as in Paris, there is no building taller than the Eiffel Tower, in Washington, D.C., there is no building taller than the Washington Monument. By code, they cannot be. Not really historical, just kind of cool. Yes, Ben,
Why is that?
because that's how they wanted it. They put it in the code.
Okay.
It's a building ordinance. In Cary, there are certain building ordinances where you can only build buildings a certain way, and there are like signage limitations. Cities can put in whatever they want to put in for their covenants. Yep. By the late 1800s, oh my gosh, we're almost to the 20th century. Liberal forces were successfully changing many nations. We get the age of mass politics. It's the age of elections. It's the age of politics, of people being involved, which means new people get involved, like women and non-white men and non-landowning white men. So, and then eventually Native Americans in the United States will get the right to vote. And then later, you people at 18 will get the right to vote. That's it. We have revolted. You have seen the pushback to the revolt. Just like there was a Reformation in the Catholic Church, and then there's a counter-Reformation, there's a pushback. With every push forward, all progress is almost always met with a pushback. That's, man, I had the time. That's an excellent continuity and change thing. The fact that there is a conservative, and again, hopefully you have a better understanding of what that term means, that there's a resistance to change is a continuity. It happens more times than not that we move forward and like, whoa, I don't know where this is going, I don't like where this is going because I don't know where it's going. Let's pull back. Counter-Reformation was a pullback. The post-Enlightenment French Revolution, Metternich Concert of Europe was a push back. Still wanting to go forward, just at a much slower pace. But those voices in the middle class they're growing. And so that voice is going to get louder and louder, and they're going to demand to say until they get it. Whoever's hand is up, ask away.
So were African American women like roped in with the white women, or was it ever like diverse in that, or like that they were ever split up?
That's a good question. It was white men, and then non-white men, and then all women.
Okay.
Yep, it's a good question. And then Native
Was there a
American.
certain reason why, like that, why they didn't have a difference between white and black women?
Because by the time, and